In this tutorial on building our tile map based game with processing, we are going to work on the combat state. So we're going to have to add in our different game states. So we'll have our game, there'll be a combat state, there'll be a win state, a lose state. We can even have a start state if we want. So we can have as many states in our project as we deem appropriate, but we're just going to start with the base ones that we need to make it happen. Now, a couple of other things that we're going to do as part of dressing all of this up is introduce how we can utilize a font. So I have downloaded a font called 8-Bit Madness, and it's a TrueType font, so a .ttf file, and we can add that to our project. So we'll learn about doing that, and then we also are going to need some artwork. So the artwork that we're going to need, when I look at my characters, these are all pretty tiny. So we need to make them a little bit bigger so we have the ability to grab, and we'll make individual frames that we're going to work with on this. So much like here where I have my unicorn artwork that we've been working with, I scaled up a version so it's 10 times the size, and that's actually the size I want because I want a frame of artwork that's 320 by 320 pixels. So we're going to look at how we can access that in Pascal, and we can even create our scaled up artwork there as well. So no time like the present to get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is import in my file. So I will choose Browse Images, and inside of Browse Images I can select my unicorn. So this is the original one, so each one of these is 32 pixels by 32, we can see, because the file comes out at 128 by 128. So I will choose Open, and now we have to tell it how big our frame size is, so I say 32 and 32, so that gives us our squares. So we're reopening. Yes, I know, I'm going to replace what's there. And one thing I could do is I could go through and I could delete all the frames I don't need and then do my export, or I'm just going to do an export, then I'll grab the frame that I'm looking for. So when I export out, we did a sprite sheet previously. This time I'm going to choose a zip file. And when I choose a zip file, I'm going to boost my resolution so that I am effectively going at 10x size, so it's 320. So that will make a graphic of each of these frames that is 320 pixels by 320 pixels, so I can just download that zip so it creates the file that I need. So the file landed in my downloads folder. I moved it over here, and now I can see where I have each of these graphics that's 320 pixels in size. So with this I can just decide which frame that I want to use on it as part of it. So I'm just going to go for the slightly longer leg one, so we'll choose Sprite 01 here, just drag it out, and I'm going to just rename this Unibig. And now we get to repeat that same process for our other file. This time I'm going to, if we look at the characters that we have here, so the 2x1, so these are now 32 by 32. So now let's open it up. We'll enter in those numbers, 32, tab 32, and hit next. And I will replace what's here. I guess I could have put everything into one, but that's all right. So now it's 32 by 32. It's time to export this out. It will remember the settings that I just previously used. So 10x, that means each one will be 320 pixels in size. It will do it as a zip. And now let's download that zip. So retrieving that folder from my downloads, I will see that I have all of my different characters. So if I want to continue on using the ghost, I want a view of the ghost facing me, so let's see which one I like best. I'm going to go with this one, so Sprite 55. So I'll just drag this over here. Now it is possible that we could access the sprite sheet and just copy the pixels from it, so we could have the really big one, but this enemy one, if we put it into a sprite sheet, it's really bigger than the maximum pixel dimensions that we want to deal with, so we don't want to go there on it. So again, to just look at where we've ended this, we have a 320 pixel version of our enemy, a 320 pixel version of our player, and I have a font, this font that I'm going to work with. It fits with my little kind of 8-bit retro styling that I'm working on for this project. Okay, I'm just going to choose a slightly happier picture to put in the background. And now just do a little bit of screen house cleaning here so we can see what we are working with. And now let's start adding a few more items into our project so that we can make this happy. Alright, so we know that we need a few more images here, so we have our image here, and then this is going to be our large player and our large enemy. So now we're bringing those in. We need to have our font that we're working with, and we will store it inside a variable, so that's how we're able to access it, and the type is a P font. So capital P, capital F for font, so it's a processing font as we bring it in. And I'll just name it what it is, making it a little bit easy. Now, we're going to add some other things in our project in a little bit, but for now, we'll just start out with game state because we know we are going to need that. And the good part about this is as we work on developing this game state, we can just set our game state to combat and then deal with the combat stuff, so we don't have to like comment out code and do a bunch of crazy stuff. We just change what our starting state is. Okay, so to continue on, and this is also nice, if I organize my screen this way I can see file names while I'm doing this, so it makes it easier. So our large P is going to be a load image. It's in our data folder, and then it is unibig.png. It's really easy to forget your file type extensions when you are loading images and you type in that path. You just think about the name and don't really think about the .png part, and then you wonder why you get error messages while you're doing it. So these are sometimes things that we have to take care of on it so that we can make them work a little bit easier for us. Now to do the font, we do it a little bit different. So I'll list my variable, and now this is, we use create font here, and we're grabbing the font out of our data folder, and that font is 8-bit-madness.ttf, and we specify the size we want to bring it in at, and I'm going to specify I want my font size to be 64. Oh, not 8 big font, 8-bit font. There we go. That was why we're getting an error message. And now, once we have that font created, then we can specify the font we want to use. So we go text font and just say 8-bit font, just like that. And now we have it set up. So if I wanted to test it, we could specify something like score and put it 50-50 and rerun our project. And it worked, except that we forgot to, well, I forgot to say fill. I want to just fill it with white, so it filled it with green, so we can see it's breaking the lines here. Let's try again, and now we can see the text is showing up on screen. So it's using that font, it's putting it in at that size. So we do have options, we can scale it. So I like to use the 64, so I bring it in at the maximum size I'm planning to work with it, but I could choose a different size if I want to bring it in bigger. This being a pixel-based font, it actually kind of does these scaling things decently. But if I say text size and put in something like 24, we'll notice how this shrinks it down considerably, and now the text is smaller. So this is just some easy ways that we can work with it. So we've used text sizing before, so now we can see how we're working with it. Now we will be getting and displaying the score later on as we have multiple enemies and we calculate how to work with them as we advance our game. So our final item here, so our game state equals, and now we have different options for it. So I could choose something like game, but it's nice to put our game states in capital letters, so when we're scanning through the code, it just makes it a little bit easier to find them. With our game state set up, what I do want to do is I want to go and grab what is the game, and let's just do a little bit of auto formatting here, clean things up, put in some closing comments, and this is going to be our end draw, and 4, and this is my end. Oh, missed a slash. And intersect. So we set those up on it. But what I want to do is now make a new tab, and in this tab I'm going to refer to this. I'm going to put my game states in tabs just to help simplify and organize my code a little bit. So it's not, it creates a new PDE file that's part of the project, but it makes it easier for us to navigate through. So I'm not having to keep scrolling up and scrolling down. So I really have my utility functions, I have my setup function. So if we break things into separate tabs, it really can help clean and organize what we're doing. So what I want to do is just simply say, we'll make one, and we'll just call this one game for this tab. And we can see over here it just made a new file, and I know I'm going to want another tab for my combat state. We're going to want that as well, and it does organize things by alphabetical, so it uses capital letters first and lowercase letters after that. So that's part of how it sets those things up. Now what we want to do next is go if game state is equal to game, and then we're going to have a game method here, or function. I'll say play game. Now we haven't made that yet, so I am going to get an error message for now, and we will have to deal with that in just a moment. So then else if game state is equal to combat, we'll go here. So what we're going to find is we get to keep adding different game states in, and we'll end it finally with an else, and like we've done before, where we'll then just print out a message that says something went wrong with game state. So our function doesn't return anything. This will be play game, And now combat will be the same, play combat. Now if we go back over here, error messages have gone away. What we want to do is grab the code that corresponds to our play here, and I'm going to just cut it. Well, I missed something. This is why it's good to have those comments, so I can very quickly realize I missed that closing curly. Cut that. That's perfect. That is from my game, so we'll paste that in. Auto format, Command or Control T, that cleans that up. All right. Now, if we go back here, we can see things are cleaned up a little bit. So create enemy start, that is something that happens in our setup. We have our collision methods here, the enemy and the player when they're running into the walls. We render out our map. We have our key pressing, our rectangle intersect for player and enemy so we know when they're touching. So we have a lot of different things that we are working with. Some of those comments, we can get rid of that and short upper code if we need, but those are all kind of utility items that we're working with, and we don't really need to revisit those anymore. So that is something that you could think about, even putting those into their own tab. Just to, you could have a tab for intersect, a tab for wall collisions, or you could view that all as kind of the same logic, so you just put that in one thing. So it helps to break up your code to make it a little bit more manageable, so you're not scrolling and scrolling so much. So it does help to organize it a little bit more. But what I want to do is I want to engage in combat right now. So I have an enemy that I'm working with here, but this is an enemy coming out of my array. It's not just a random enemy, but it is the enemy inside that enemy array. So we need to keep track of which enemy that is, because when we fight it, we need to know its properties. So that means we're going to need a way to keep track of our current enemy. So it's going to be a variable of type enemy, and we'll just refer to it as current enemy. So current enemy will get populated when we run into something. So inside the game, when we intersect with an enemy, it's at this point that we want to say current enemy is now equal to the one that we just intersected, which is enemies, square bracket I, square bracket. So that allows us to intersect it and make that happen. For testing purposes, what we're just going to hard code that in, because we're going to just start the project out and we're going to switch to just working inside the combat state, so we don't have to keep, every time we test it, we run over to it. So we're going to just do a little temporary setup here. It's not something that we're going to keep. Well, so current enemy will be equal to in our enemies, and since we only have one right now, we'll just say enemies 0. I'm gonna make a note here. Delete later. This is just a temporary setup. It's something that we have to remember we did that, so then when we're trying to have multiple enemies and wonder why it's not working with all of it. So we need to have that set. Oh, and then our game state needs to be in caps, so we'll set the game state to combat. So now if I run my project, we'll see that nothing happens. So this is where we need to start working on the combat state and making something happen there. So the first thing I want to do is to choose the color for my background. And I can pull up the color picker. And I can just set a basic color. And I need to spell background correctly with the G. So now we have that set. And the next thing I want to do is start to figure out how to draw just put some graphics on screen to make it look good, put the images on that we had. So right now we're doing a little bit of kind of our user interface design. Then once we have that, then we're going to start figuring out where and how we will do the logic for the actual combat process. So first we're just going to build up our combat screen. And I'm just kind of guessing where I want these items to be on screen. Here, now let's run this and see what happens. And it puts them on screen. So we have the player here, we have the enemy showing up over there. Alright, that gives me a starting point. I want to put some text across the screen up top where it says fight. I want it to have some bars on here. So we have a player bar, health bar, we have an enemy bar. Down in the corner here, I'm going to draw a button that says attack. So that's our fight button that we'll be clicking on. So these are all the items that we want to add as we start drawing it out. So with that, let's draw some text on here. I'll set a color for the text to 255, so it's white. Set our text alignment to center. Center is not in quotes because center has been set up as a constant. So when we have constants, we can just reference them and we don't have to use quotes around them. I'm going to make this text a little bit bigger. So I'll go 128. And we'll just use her little kind of Mortal Kombat inspired fight. And I'll put it so we set the text centered, so now we start drawing the text from the middle of the screen. And let's see, I'm just kind of guessing here placement wise. Alright, I like that. So what I want to do is, before the text, I want to draw a rectangle that can hold the text inside it so that it gives me a nice background for that area. So if you, of course, want to get some assistance choosing colors, you can use the color selector and find the different colors. Actually, we'll just put it down here as we are working with the colors on it. So I've done some testing with some other colors that I'm going to work with here. So I'll just choose this color. And now I'm going to draw this rectangle from 0 and 0, make it the width of the screen, and I'm going to make it 70 pixels tall. Now if we run this and see what it looks like, you'll see that I've now done that. We'll also notice that I'm getting this black line here. So this is a stroke that's happening, and I want to get rid of the strokes. So there's no more strokes on shapes when I draw them, so it's just the colors. So that's a little bit better. So now I've created, I'm just going to put a little here and say UI elements. So with these UI elements, so I've drawn the rectangle there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a red bar. This will be the health bar for both of our players. And to do that, just go here and go with that. So our fill, we'll just do pure red at 255.00, and then we'll draw a rectangle. And this time the rectangle that I draw is going to be starting at 0, but we'll drop it down 70, so it's now below the turquoise that we just drew on screen. And then we'll make it the full width, and in this case I'll make the bar 24 pixels tall. So now if we run it, we'll see that there is a red bar. That will be the health bar that shows up as the player or enemy start losing their health. And now what I want to do is just draw a little cover up that's going to fill the middle. So currently my screen is 640 pixels tall. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a rectangle that is 300 pixels wide for the player, put a colored rectangle over the middle section of the red here, then a rectangle that is 300 pixels wide to represent the health of the enemy. And then I'm going to make those bars change size based on their respective health values. So let's just get this little cover up going on here. So now this cover up is going to be, we'll set it to a different color, and then we'll draw this rectangle. This rectangle starts at position 300, and it's covering the red bar, so it drops down 70. It's going to be exactly 40 pixels wide and 24 pixels tall. So now when we look at what we have here, we can see we have that little purple bar over the middle. So I'm going to use a color to represent the health of the player, a different color to represent the health of the enemy, and then we will fit those in on the project here. So just to do a little bit of spacing so we can take a look at it. And now I'll choose a color for the player and their health. And now this time we're going to draw a rectangle, and it will start out at 0 and it will drop down 70 because it needs to cover up this red bar. And I know I want it to be 300 wide and 24 tall. Now let's fill that and see. So the player gets represented by pink. And now this 300, I don't want to use 300. I want to use a variable. I need to represent the health of the player. But the player doesn't have health yet. The enemy doesn't have health yet. So we need to go grab those and set those values in place. So going into my player, I want to set up the health of the player. And this health is going to be an integer value. Okay, so I could add this to an existing line with values, but because we're adding this in stages or iterations, we're doing iterative programming, we're adding to it as we build. It just kind of makes sense to keep it separate that way, so we know when we look at our code, kind of the steps as, whoop, no, we already did our int. And we'll start out and the player gets a health of 300. Now we're going to set up our enemies, and the enemies get the same kind of thing. So they'll have a health value, and we will set their health value down here. And they start out at a value of 300. So now, instead of representing this with 300, what we can do is go p.health. And now that I have more than just numbers here, it might be nice to just put some spaces in, clean it up a little bit. Let's run this again and see, and it looks exactly the same. That's perfect. Now we need to represent the enemy health here. And now I'll choose a color to represent the enemy. Oh, and I meant to put in a comment just so we know what we're working on here. Now this is going to, when we resize this, the width of this, we want each of them, so if I lower the player's health, and let's just say I took 50 off of it, so I'll just go minus 50 right there. Now if we draw a rectangle for the enemy, well, its left edge is going to be at 340, that's right against the purple, and it's going to start its Y at 70, and it'll be the current enemy's health, and 24. Okay, so let's just take a look and see what we've got going here. We can see we have the two values. That one, the player has lost some on it. Now if I take, let's say I take 63 off of the enemy's health, we can see how it takes it from the right side, but I want this to be shifting over. So what we can do is the amount that we want to shift it over is, we need to figure out, so instead of kind of shrinking the width of it like we did the players, we can just kind of move this purple bar off screen, exposing the red bar. So if we just keep sliding its left edge over, that's really going to perform the same operation. So what we really want would be 340 plus, say, 63. Now if we do that, we'll see that now it moved it over. So what we're going to do with this 63 is we're going to be creating an offset value. So what I want to do is, in the combat, I want to be generating this offset. So we'll say offset is equal to, and now in this case it's the full value of the enemy's health, or its starting value, but we're going to subtract from it its current health. So that gives us like how much it's been decreased by, because when we play the game and they attack, so we'll push the attack button and then they fight, and whichever one loses some health, or maybe they both lose health depending on how we work out the logistics. Player's health, okay, it's going to go down. The enemy's health needs to go down. So as the enemy's health goes down, we want to take that 300 and subtract whatever that is, because when we're at full health, 300 minus 300 would be 0. So now if we just go here and say offset, so by default, when our enemy's health is 300, 300 minus 300 is 0, so 340 plus offset means we should be displaying a full value. But if enemy's health, let's just change it to 120, well, not 1220, but so if our health is 120, we'll see that now that bar slid over. So we're able to, when we subtract the health, that's going to just slide that over, revealing the damage that our enemy has taken. Now, of course, whatever colors and designs that you figure out, that's up to you as to how you want to set things up. I'm just doing this because it's both convenient and just seems to be working for what we need. So now we kind of have the look going on, and our final step really is we need to create a button. So to create this button that we can click on, we need to draw a button here. So I'm going to make a rectangle button. I'm going to draw a bigger rectangle. I'm going to draw a smaller rectangle inside of it. Now I could draw a button and have a fill and a stroke color and do all that, but I'm just going to just draw a couple rectangles because it's just as easy to do that versus setting my fill and stroke. So I'm going to set a fill color, and this time I'll go 62, 26, 149. And again, I've played with some colors already in the color picker when I was prototyping this, so that's kind of how I figured out what I want the colors to be. Now I'm going to draw a rectangle, and the rectangle, I know I want it to start about halfway over because I'm going to draw it in this bottom right quadrant. And I mean, these numbers, I know approximately what I want because I've been experimenting and typing in some values to see, okay, so that puts my button right there. So that gives me a button. Now on this button, I'm going to set a fill color to white and then do text. And on this text, we'll just say attack and now if we run this, let's see what happens, and we'll see that attack is really big. So just going to put a comment here and go button text. So we know that all the lines happening after this deal with the button text. So we set the color for it. And now I want to set my size to a more modest amount because that 128 is a little bit big for that. Now we can see it fits inside the box. Excellent. Now I want to put a second rectangle, the smaller one, so I'll choose a different color. And for this rectangle, we'll choose color 171, 123, and 203. And then I want to insert this inside. So I'm going to go down 10 pixels from where the existing one is. I'm going to go over 10 pixels from where the big purple box is, and that means it now needs to be 20 pixels shorter and 20 pixels narrower. Now if we run that, we'll see that I've set things up. Whoop, and I forgot set my number off. I went in the wrong direction. From 300 I subtracted 20 onto it. So I want to go 330. Well, I was thinking ahead on some numbers, and now I have the text. I have my button, but it's not clickable yet because we haven't figured out how to do that. So what we want to do is we want to make this button clickable. So we want, when I press the button, if my mouse is located inside that, then I want to call my fight action. Because currently all we've been doing inside Underplay Combat here is we have been drawing what we want to have on screen. But what we want to find out is when I press this button, we want something to happen. To make this work, we need to have the button register when we're pressing the mouse. Now, if we do it in here, so if we do something like if mouse pressed, it will be a continual option. So that's not going to work really well for our project because it will be detecting as kind of fluidly, 60 times a second, and we'll watch our health bars go down super fast. So we'll just put a comment in there, do a void, because if we put mouse pressed out here like this, what it does is it only registers once. and then I have to press it again to get it to register a second time. Now, what we're going to be doing is saying if our mouse X is less than, I'm going to look at where my button is. So my button is right here. This is the button. So that's the full size of the button, that line right there. So if my mouse X is less than, in this case, 500, and my mouse X is greater than the left edge, in this case is going to be 320, and my mouse Y is going to be less than, now the top of the button in here, we put it at 500. Oh, wait, mouse X isn't 500. Yeah, oh no, mouse X less than that right edge of this, because 320 plus 180, that works out to be 500. So that's why mouse X is 500 and mouse Y, the top edge is 500. And the bottom edge of it, so our mouse Y is going to be greater than, in this case, wait, oh sorry, so our mouse Y is less than, so 570 is the bottom, so this is the bottom. So we have right edge, left edge, bottom edge. Bottom edge is going to be 570, and then our top edge is going to be 500. So it's just kind of a weird, oh, I need a Y right there. It's just a weird convenience factor that we got 500 in there twice. But we're trying to pinpoint where it is. And to verify we have these coordinates correct, what I'm just going to do is go fill. And we'll just go 255, 255, 0, 100. Just make translucent yellow. And like that. So we'll just kind of fill it. So now, if we run this and click nothing, nothing, and we can see. So it's working, not working, working, not working, 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 working. Now, a problem with this. So this mouse press, it doesn't live inside combat. It lives outside combat. It's its own function, but it's part of our combat process. So if our game state wasn't combat, but our, well, if I spell game right, if our game state is game, if I click down where that button is, it's still working. So what we also need to know is we need to know when we're actually engaged in fighting. So we'll set that back to combat. And we need to know when we are fighting. And one way that we could go about doing it is inside our game state here, we can just go game state, or not inside game state, inside combat, and just say game state is equal to, so when our game state is equal to combat and we click in those areas, then it's going to work. So let's go back here, change this back to game. So if we run this, doesn't work there, but now set it back to combat, and now we can see that's working. So now we've made it so that behaves a little bit better for us. Put in a close mouse pressed option there, so that takes care of that. Now what we really want to have happen is we don't really care about that little flash of yellow. I mean, we can leave it, or we can make the flat a different color, just so we get that sense of like something happened each time we do it. We can make it flash black, purple, red, who knows. But what I want to do is I want to engage in my fight behavior here. So I'm going to make a separate method for that, and it's red because we haven't defined that yet. I'll just put it up here. Close that and fight, put in our closing comment there. So what we want to do is when we fight, we want to have each of our player and our enemy, they'll generate a random number. So there's any number of ways we can do this, but we kind of look at it as like, well, we have a attack power or capabilities. And the number that we work with here, remember that our player starts with 300, enemy starts with 300. So how much we take off, what we want that random number to be, really depends on how many times we want to have to hit the attack button to make something resolve here. So if we make it equal, so they both have equal values, so we'll send our player attack, we'll set that equal to, we're going to round down a random number so it creates an integer. And yeah, we could make it, need one more parent to equal it out. So it's, out of 100. And the numbers that we put in here are ones where we have to do some testing. If we have a lot of enemies, and each enemy has taken out a lot of our health when we fight it, we might not be able to get through all of them. So we have to find that, do we need to make the player more powerful? Do we make the enemies less powerful on their attacks? But right now we'll just leave it so they're both equal as part of it. So what we can do is, we're going to just figure out whoever had the higher attack value, the other person is going to lose health. So that's what we're going to make happen with it. So to do that, what we can do is go if our player attack is greater than or equal to our enemy attack, that means the player won, so our current enemy's health is going to be reduced by, so we'll use minus equals, the attack of the player. Now the other situation would be that the enemy was successful. So we can just use an else here. And that means the player's health is going to be reduced by the enemy's attack. Now, what I want to do here is just print out these values here with it before worrying about adjusting these things. So we'll just go we'll just print them out. Like that. So when we press the button, we'll see some stuff happen down here so we can keep track of it. So nothing happens there. Now we can see the player attack was 65, the enemy was 57. Okay. And now the player was 95, enemy was 73, so we can see, eventually someone loses. Let's try it again. Okay, so we're able to make that happen. Now if I just want the screen area down here to flash, leave the fight and the bar alone with it. What we can do here is just choose a fill, and this time I'm just going to choose kind of a dark blue color or bluish color, and we can go all the way to the left, but we want to drop it down. So we know that the turquoise is 70, then the red is 24, so that means we drop it down 94 because I don't want to flash the rest of that. And then we can just go with here, and it's technically it's height minus 94, but it doesn't matter if we flash something off screen. Just going to get rid of that yellow. I don't want the yellow to flash. So now get that visual like something is happening. Now it is interesting how almost every single time the player, we're both getting random numbers, but each time we've played this, oh, all right, now the player finally lost. So out of 5 tries we lost. So our random numbers do have some suspicious seeding on their powers, but at least, you know, it gives us, you know, some sense of what is going on. So we've now generated our basic combat structure. Player is starting out at a disadvantage because it loads and they already have lost 50. Let's try again. It's like, what is going on? All right, so now we're there, and now we can attack. And that one, didn't seem... And I couldn't figure out when I looked at the values that it seemed that the player won and lost health, and now I just realized if the player's attack, yeah, so if the player's attack is greater than, so let's just verify it's all working correctly. We're here. We attack. Player won, enemy lost. Okay, so it seemed like it was backwards. All right, so we're good. It's all working. Again, this is why we check these things. We look at the numbers, we look at the visual representation. But now we want to tie this into the game. And this is where we need to then build out our win state, our lose state. We need to make it so that enemies not only lose all their health, but when they do, that they die and remove themselves from the game board. So we need a few more things that we need to add into our critters.